broadcasting from the Unshackled studios in Melbourne. This is WilmsFront, brought to you by the Unshackled.net. Now here's Tim Wilms.
Hello everybody and welcome to this week's WilmsFront Snapshot news show, coming to you on this Tuesday, the 19th of May 2026. We are live on the WilmsFront YouTube channel. Hello to everyone watching. It is 8 p.m. here in Melbourne, Victoria, where the bronze statue of Dan Andrews is locked in at a cost to the Victorian taxpayers of $134,000. The statue, which is being sculpted by Fitzroy-based firm Meriden Sculpture, will be located in Treasury Place, along with the statues of the other Victorian premiers who've served over 3,000 days in office. Jeff Kennett, who it was actually his government that enacted the legislation to have a statue for premiers who served over 3,000 days in office. Some people say that it's because he wanted a statue of himself, since he expected to win the 1999 election, and of course he didn't. And this is what Labor's media release has been eager to point out, that, oh, it's Jeff Kennett's legislation. Well, you could change the legislation and not have this statue of Dan Andrews erected. So Jeff Kennett said the statue should wear a mask to remind people of what he forced across people's mouths during his longest ever COVID lockdown. There was Pauline Hanson's plan, which is when One Nation wins seats in the next Victorian Parliament, we will relocate the new Daniel Andrews statue to a special museum underwater art in Antarctica. Well, there could be another location for it down at the bottom of the Yarra River. Tony Shaw, the 1990 Collingwood Premiership captain, he suggested we could halve the state debt if we charged $1 to piss on it in an orderly fashion. Now, it's certainly fair to say that this is one statue where I don't think there'll be much outrage, except from the Dan stands, over its eventual decapitation and desecration. There better not be one extra dollar spent on security for it. And it'd show Victoria Police's bias if they spent more time investigating the vandals of the Dan Andrews statue than they did over those who've decapitated statues of Captain Cook and Anzac memorials. Now, I heard Peter Credlin last night saying that there's been a run on angle grinders at Bunnings. Now, the Victoria Police, they can't charge us all with incitement. Maybe Jess Wilson should promise that when the statue is torn down, desecrated, decapitated, that it should be mended, replaced with a statue more appropriate to Dan Andrews' legacy, maybe falling down some stairs, or maybe running over Bike Boy. The Bike Boy, Ryan Millman, he got arrested recently for carjacking in Pakenham, and he was already on bail for another offence. Or maybe Jess Wilson and the Liberals should pledge to have the statue re-sculpted with excrement. So this was announced late on a Friday afternoon when governments, quote, take out the trash. Well, Dan Andrews' legacy is certainly trash. And imagine if this is unveiled, the statue, before the Victorian state election. That would Jacinta Allen would be signing her own political death warrant.
This is WilmsFront, brought to you by the Unshackled.net.
Now, it's been a week since Jim Chalmers got up in the House to deliver his fifth budget. And obviously, this time last week, I was reacting in the immediate aftermath. But we now know of plenty of hidden nasties in the budget papers. So Angus Taylor, the Liberal leader, he delivered his budget in reply speech on Thursday evening, where he pledged to restrict access to 17 welfare payments, including the NDIS, to Australian citizens only. He said dishing out billions and billions of dollars to people in this country are not citizens for welfare. That's not fair on hardworking Australian citizens, though they will still receive Medicare. And it's also worth pointing out that Angus Taylor, he is not proposing to raise the 4 years to become an Australian citizen, from being a permanent resident to becoming an Australian citizen. And he basically said that this policy was designed to encourage permanent residents to become Australian citizens, saying, if you commit to us, we'll commit to you. Now, obviously, there was the outrage from Labor and the migrant lobbies, who they tend to only, their votes when it comes to federal election, their primary consideration is which party is better for their particular migrant community, and it's usually Labor. So Anthony Albanese told reporters on Friday, I wonder what the distinction between Australians and migrants is, because I've never seen that used before in a country like ours. Jacinta Allen, Victorian Premier, said we encourage people to become citizens, but there are reasons why some migrants don't. In my view, that doesn't make migrants less committed to Australia. And now it's been brought up that countries like India and China don't allow dual citizenship, which means that a lot of them keep their Indian and Chinese citizenship and just be permanent residents here. And it is argued they pay Australian tax, and so they should receive the government services. And there's a lot of people who argue that Australia shouldn't allow dual citizenship. Obviously, you can't be a dual citizen to serve in the federal parliament, but Australia has I don't know what the number is. I'm just speculating. It's probably in the millions dual citizens. So I think if we had a vote about whether, because I think that Germany, you're only allowed one citizenship. I should be corrected. It's not just It's not just a thing that is particular countries in Asia. Now, also contained in Angus Taylor's budget in reply speech was to index progressive income tax brackets to inflation to permanently eliminate bracket creep, because obviously we are in a high inflation period again. So that means that it's called the price wage spiral. So although most Australians get a pay rise, it's gobbled up by inflation, and then you're pushed into a higher tax bracket. So you, instead of paying 14 cents in the dollar, you'll be paying 30. And so that's called bracket creep. And it's great for the revenue collecting governments such as the Albanese government, because they can collect more revenue from you. You're paying more tax without actually explicitly increasing your taxes. And then they can claim that they're cutting your taxes. What all they're doing is just giving back to you the tax the extra tax that you've been paying through bracket creep. Taylor also promised a future generations fund using 80% of budget windfalls from resources to pay down debt and invest in infrastructure, because there is, despite all of the tax hikes that the Albanese government has introduced in their budget, there's still going to be deficits for another 10 years. And this is the fact that there's the broken promises by increasing the taxes on capital gains tax, ending negative gearing for established homes, and also having a minimum tax rate of 30% for discretionary trusts. The Liberals and Angus Taylor, they have a spring in their step and are going comfortable about going after the Albanese government for their broken promises, and also because there is no disagreement from the Liberal Party, from moderates to conservatives, that they are for lower taxes, they are for small business, they are for aspiration. And so this is why Angus Taylor, you can see him very comfortable this week, saying the budget's attacking aspiration, and also using the term toxic tax, which is a throwback to Tony Abbott calling the carbon tax a toxic tax, for you Australian political nerds. Now, the hidden nasties in the budget papers, they include the Albanese government's planned minimum tax rate of 30% on discretionary trusts. Now, this applies to what are called discretionary testamentary trusts, which are created when a person dies. So this has been labelled a death tax by stealth. So from 1st of July 2028, there'll be a minimum tax rate of 30%, because it is argued, and again, this is the class warfare of Labor, that rich people use these discretionary trusts to income split between family members. Now, discretionary means that the trustee can decide who gets what. While a fixed trust, you can't change who gets what. A discretionary, you can change it. And now, trusts a very complex and dry area of taxation. But given that a discretionary testament trust, they're created after a person dies, and then there's going to be a minimum 30% tax to the income. That is a de facto death tax. It's not a scare campaign, as Jim Chalmers claimed it was. And then there's the changes to capital gains tax, abolishing the 50% tax discount, not just for the capital gains for property investors. It's already having an effect in the Sydney property market. There was already, I think, a 50% weekend drop in. There was only 50% of Sydney auctions or home sales that cleared. So the combination of the rollback of negative gearing and the capital gains tax discount is having the desired effect on stopping the increase in housing prices or the housing bubble. Now, this was Jim Chalmers' argument post-budget, that this was about rebalancing the property market in favour of first home buyers, young Australians, but they have used a sledgehammer to crack a nut, because the abolition of the 50% capital gains discount and replacing it with inflation indexation also applies to shares, the capital gains on shares, and also the sale of businesses. So this will affect startups and small businesses. So this has led to quite a humorous online AI meme campaign of startups and small business people announcing their new silent investor, Anthony Albanese, who doesn't do anything but still takes 47% of the profits. That's the top marginal income tax rate, which obviously if a small business owner pays themselves a salary or pays themselves a dividend, it's usually taxed at the top marginal rate. This is the most hilarious one on the right. Anthony Albanese as a co-owner of a ladies-only gym. With the Tickle versus Giggle decision, Albanese can be running a Pilates class in a women's-only gym. Now, Anthony Albanese, as we are aware, hates the people mocking him with memes. You will remember he a couple of years ago, he expressed his pleasure with social media companies taking down memes of his head on other people's bodies. And most recently, there was the AI memes of him in bikinis. Now, Anthony Albanese, it would basically show what a shallow and a petty tyrant he is if he got the e-safety commissioner to take down every one of these AI generated memes of him as a silent investor. We know deep down that he hates it, but he's tried to just brush it off when he was asked about it. today.
I think some of them are very flattering, and I thank them for picking very nice photos of me, and I thank them for that. Well, our policies are very clear. When it comes to capital gains tax, what we are simply doing is returning the system to what was there before 1999. And when those changes were introduced, what we've seen since then is a massive distortion of investment towards housing away from other forms of investment because of the changes that were made. What we're doing is simply moving to a real gain system. So it only impacts when gains are made, capital gains. It's not when the normal course of business occurs. When a capital gains occurs, it's looked at the real gains, and it's the gains less inflation as we go forward. And that's a system that operated effectively between 1985 to 1999.
That reminds me, Albanese talking about real gains. Remember, he and Jim Chalmers wanted to tax unrealised capital gains in superannuation accounts. And again, Anthony Albanese, trying to deflect and say that this is about fixing distortions in the property markets. It's fair to say that when Peter Costello and John Howard changed the capital gains system from indexation to the 50% discount, they were trying to incentivise Australians buying shares, but it created the housing speculation and the bubble that has continued, which is good news. Was good news for boomers with their weatherboard houses in North Sydney, though. As I mentioned about the Sydney housing market clearing rates on the weekend, they'll be very angry that their $3 million weatherboard house in North Sydney might not sell for as much. And now this is probably the most anti-business budget that we have seen in Australia's history. Pauline Hanson called it communism and a shit sandwich. So, which is because Pauline Hanson, you may not like her rough way of talking and some of the crassness she comes out with, but she speaks from the heart way better than Angus Taylor, who was on Sky News. Paul Murray Ask Me Anything, and just no matter what the question was, stuck to the talking points that his advisors had drummed into him. He's basically, what would you call him, Angus bot. We had, was it Rubio bot in the 2016 US presidential election. Now, there are concerns that startups could move to Singapore and New Zealand. Obviously, the federal government, what is that? They're trying to attract these data centers, AI data centers, and they like it incentivizing big business to come here, but it's small business venture capitalists who really get screwed over. I mean, it's sort of the way things are in Australia. It's you're better off being a corporate wage slave than you are trying to start your own business. To be honest, speaking of small business people, former Liberal Senator turned publican Holly Hughes announced at a One Nation fundraiser at her Liddell pub in the Blue Mountains, along with former federal Liberal Vice President Tina McQueen, that they had joined One Nation. And now Tina McQueen, it's fair to say she if you've ever watched her on Sky News throughout the years, she has had conservative values for her entire time in the Liberal Party, though there is much more skepticism about Holly Hughes's motivations for joining One Nation. Is it more spite against Angus Taylor, as she blames Angus Taylor for ending her political career, bumping her off into an unwinnable position in the New South Wales Liberal Senate pre-selection. And when she turned a commentator on Sky News, she slagged Angus Taylor off as much as she could. One of her last acts as a Liberal senator was to vote for Susan Ley as leader. She was an adamant defender of Susan Ley's leadership and against what she called the boys' club of Angus Taylor and Andrew Hastie, trying to tear Susan Ley down. She did quit the Liberal Party back in November, and her reasons were because there was no interest from any of the major parties in supporting families with autism. She has a child with autism. Matt Canavan, the Nationals leader on Sky News on Sunday night, claimed that Holly Hughes quit the Liberal Party because of their abandonment for net zero. Holly Hughes on her Facebook page said that this was a lie. Said, just in case she missed it or thought it was true, Matt Canavan and I support coal. Net zero is rubbish, always has been, and the rush to renewables is destroying regional communities. I've moved parties. The fact they're trying to smear me with unbelievable, provable lies is bizarre and demonstrates how desperate they are. She was on Sherry Markson's show last night, and they played Angus Taylor's dismissing her and Tina McQueen's defections. He defended them as their choice, and Holly Hughes, she must not have realised the camera had cut back to her, because she was pulling a face like this, which proves how she truly hates Angus Taylor's guts, and have no fury like a woman scorned in Senate pre-selection. And now in the most recent polls, not only did it show that the Albanese's budget was the most unpopular budget in 30 years, Paul Keating's reversal of his LAW tax cuts is still the most unpopular budget, and Paul Keating was turfed out in 1996. It's even more unpopular than Tony Abbott and Joe Hockey's budget of 2013 and 14, where they broke election promises, tried to have the Medicare co-payment, which it's fair to say that Australians, they don't believe that you should have to pay to go to the GP. It's interesting today that Tony Abbott and Peter Credlin, who has had a big hand in that budget as the Chief of Staff, still defend that budget, and Tony Abbott still defends the knighting of Prince Philip. One Nation, across all the polls, Redbridge, Freshwater, Resolve and Newspoll, is still ahead of the coalition. Maybe that's why Angus Taylor said on Sky News last night he will do whatever it can to beat Labor, leaving the door open to a One Nation partnership. Though Jane Hume said that she's interested in no alliance with One Nation there. So is she vetoing her leader there? I wonder if she'll veto Angus Taylor on his commitment following our next segment.
This is WilmsFront, brought to you by the Unshackled.net.
Now, on Friday, the full bench of the federal court dismissed Sal Grover's appeal in the Tickle versus Giggle case, declaring that she and Giggle for Girls app engaged in unlawful direct discrimination on the grounds of gender identity by removing Miss Roxanne Tickle, and based on the precedent in this case and the Sex Discrimination Act, we have to by law in Australia refer to Roxanne Tickle as Ms. and a she, her. So Sal Grover, directly discriminating on the grounds of gender identity was contrary to Section 22 of the Sex Discrimination Act. Now, two of the three federal court justices who ruled were women, Justices Melissa Perry, Wendy Abram, and the male on there was Jeffrey Kennett. They doubled the original compensation paid to Ms. Tickle to $20,000 and legal costs up to $100,000. Sal Grover, not surprisingly, said following the judgment, she was absolutely devastated and will wake up tomorrow and men will still not be women. And Women's Forum Australia executive Rachel Wong called the outcome unbelievable and said Australia was the laughing stock of the world right now. If you open up the dictionary and look up the definition of laughing stock, there's a picture of the map of Australia. And there's those memes there where it says beef stock, chicken stock, laughing stock, and there's a map of Australia there. There was no happy ending like there was in Britain, like in the Four Women Scotland case, who said that the Equalities Act referred to biological women. And now, the reason why the federal court ruled in this way was it was not because they were activist judges. I heard Sal Grover say that. It's because under the amendments to the Sex Discrimination Act by Julia Gillard in 2013, which was supported by the Tony Abbott-led opposition at the time, it removed the definitions of man and woman and replaced them with new protected attributes: sexual orientation, gender identity, and intersex status. So this is why the judges referred to terms such as cisgender, because there is no biological sex in the Sex Discrimination Act. There is only a gender identity. So based on the Sex Discrimination Act and this precedent, it means that every organization, company, education institution must allow any man who identifies as a woman must allow them, she, to use women's spaces. That is the law in Australia, and all states and territories still have gender self-ID laws. Now, despite the coalition in their 9 years in office, the Prime Ministers Abbott, Turnbull and Morrison, they did not amend the Sex Discrimination Act to restore biological definitions of sex. But now Angus Taylor posted on Facebook that he said that yesterday the full federal court confirmed that Australian law does not properly protect single-sex spaces for women and girls. Most Australians would find that hard to believe. A coalition government I lead will fix this. We will amend the Sex Discrimination Act to ensure that women and girls and men and boys have protections based on biological sex. We will define biological sex in the Act, male or female, the sex you are born, and will protect single-sex spaces across Australian life. This is not radical, it is common sense. Let me be clear about what this is not. This is not about targeting transgender Australians. Every protection they have currently remains. We are not removing a single protection from anyone. We are recognising something that should never have been in doubt. Biological sex is real. It matters, and women and girls deserve spaces where it is respected. This will be a first-term priority. The Prime Minister now has a simple question to answer. Does he believe women and girls deserve protections based on biological sex? So it's gone from, and James McPherson on Sky News did an excellent segment on his show, that it went from them doing nothing for 9 years in government, and then it's going to be a first-term priority. But will it go the wayside of Tony Abbott's promise to amend 18C of the Racial Discrimination Act, which John Howard, who did vote against it when he was opposition leader in 1995, did nothing to amend 18C when he was Prime Minister. It was only when Andrew Bolt had 2 of his articles banned under the Racial Discrimination Act that Tony Abbott did pledge. Now, Nationals backbencher Alison Penfold, she's planning to introduce a private members bill to the Sex Discrimination Act when Parliament resumes. Now, there hasn't been, I don't think on the various breakfast programs, the Minister for Women, Katie Gallagher, or Tanya Plibersek, another senior woman in the Albanese government. They haven't been asked directly about it, though a spokesperson said that the government believes all people are entitled to respect, dignity, and the opportunity to participate in society free from discrimination. 4 days after a reforming budget, the Liberals are choosing to demonise migrants and focus on this matter. So they're linking the Liberals, because also what Angus Taylor promised is to limit the number of migrants to the number of houses built. So I think what this statement is trying to say is that Angus Taylor is just following One Nation, which is actually what Pauline Hanson has said as well, because she has been consistent on immigration for 30 years, and she has been consistent when it comes to protecting biological sex-based rights since she returned to the Senate. And and Jane Hume, the current Deputy Liberal leader, was one of the Liberals who voted against her private members bill to have a Senate inquiry into puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones in children. We haven't heard Jane Hume also commit to amending the Sex Discrimination Act, nor Andrew Bragg, though we did hear South Australian Liberal Senator Andrew McLaughlin say that he didn't like his party demonising migrants. So And this is another thing that Pauline Hanson has said, that Angus Taylor can promise all these things on migration and the Sex Discrimination Act, but the moderate wing of the Liberal Party won't let him. Now, it's also worth mentioning that Ms. Tickle was supported in her case by the Federal Sex Discrimination Commissioner, Dr. Anna Cody, and activist group Equality Australia, which it's an interesting fact that Joe Hildebrand, Anthony Albanese's best friend at News Corp, his wife works for Equality Australia as their communications advisor. He does disclose this when these issues come up, when he's the sole Albanese government defender on Sky News panels. It's something he sort of relishes. And Equality Australia, I should mention, that is the rebranded Australian Marriage Equality, because why should the gravy train, the lobbying end with the passing of same-sex marriage? In fact, the Albanese government is going to pass special legislation to give Equality Australia access to tax-deductible donations, as the Charities Commission ruled against them. And I have to say to people in the chat, I'm very sorry that in the right corner there is a photo of Miss Roxanne Tickle, but according to Miss Tickle, that's an unflattering photo of her. Anna Abortion says, what a strange time to be alive. Brucey says, I've had a bloody gutful. That's very Pauline Hanson of you. Dawn Browning says, this is psychological abuse. Well, this is Australia. Woke is not dead. Australia tends to double down on woke.
This is WilmsFront, brought to you by the Unshackled.net. This is Wilms. This is Wilms.
We also had on Sunday Ida Hobbit, which is the International Day against homophobia, biphobia, intersexness, and transphobia. And now, despite this being on a Sunday, when there's no schools on Sunday, there was a school in Adelaide called Rhinella East College, which sent out this email saying that they will celebrate Ida Hobbit. Now, you shouldn't actually say Ida Hobbit Day, because day is already the D in Ida Hobbit. It's like saying ATM machine, where the M stands for machine. It says the college, we are proud of the rich diversity within our student body and the broader community. Ida Hobbit provides an opportunity to reinforce our commitment to inclusivity and respect for all. Our aim is to foster a school environment where every student feels safe, supported, and valued. To celebrate this important day, a range of activities will take place in the college program during break times across the school. We ask all students attend in their full school uniform, but also invite them to wear rainbow accessories such as scrunchies, socks, wristbands, or ribbon pins as a symbol of support for our inclusive community. We look forward to this opportunity to come together and celebrate the diversity that makes our school community so vibrant. Thanks for your ongoing support. Now, the reason why schools have continued to get away with this, having queer clubs, that sort of thing, is because Australian parents are so passive. And it's sort of summed up by what Wayne Carey says on Sam Newman's Cannot Be Serious. He does what he says about these, what you term cultural issues, is that I don't let it bother me because it doesn't really affect me. And this is why this is pervasive around our education system. Started with the Safe Schools program in Victoria. We have rainbow flags on kindergartens. Thankfully, in response to Rhinella East College's email, there was a protest outside the school organised by Community Voice South Australia, and this is what its spokesman, Luke Poulton, told the assembled mainstream media journalists outside the school.
Specifically, the gender agenda, what are you worried that they'll be exposed to?
Well, why are we talking about these topics to kids that have absolutely no idea what it is? Whether a child is whatever they decide to be, the word they use is only put in their head by an adult. So whether they feel a certain way or not, that's fine, but they don't even understand what that is until a certain age. So it's the adult's job to keep the mind innocent, and then once they get to an age of understanding, then it's our job to educate the right way. This is not the right way.
What age do you think they should be talking about?
13, 14. I remember when I went to school, I think we did sex ed in year 7, and then we did it again in year 9. So it's like that's the earliest I remember myself doing it. And I'm 33, so I went to school not that long ago really, but even in my time from then to now, it's drastically changed, and it's gone from young kids to now babies almost being included in it.
Thought he spoke very well there, Luke Poulton. I should get him on WilmsFront. And now Brucey says, I couldn't believe this was a thing when I heard about it years ago. Yeah, it sounds like it's about hobbits in the US state of Idaho with that acronym. But wait, there's more. So in the city of Greater Geelong, their breastfeeding room in their council civic headquarters has now been rebranded the breast chest feeding room to promote diverse and inclusive language. So it's acting executive director of corporate services, Monica Thompson, said the private room was for lactating parents to feed or express milk. We are committed to inclusion, diversity and equity, including the use of inclusive and gender neutral language in documentation like our enterprise agreement, she said. Ms. Thompson said the staff only room helped employees balance work and family responsibility. There's no signage stating the name of the room, nor is it titled the breast chest feeding room. It only is called that in the enterprise agreement. Now, it should be noted that some men do have breasts. That's why the term man boobs exists. So this is about, it's about redefining language by using the term chest feeding. It's changing language to make a point as part of this Orwellian cultural Marxist change. And I think it's apparently because trans men can breastfeed after they've had double mastectomies because they can still give birth. And then there's also, don't forget, there's she got the sack as a counsellor from Breastfeeding Australia, Jasmine Sussex, for condemning a trans woman who through hormonal inducement was breastfeeding their child, because there's a scientific way now to induce lactation in trans women, biological men, and they claim that it's just as nutritious for newborns as well. Okay, that's very much enough here.
This is WilmsFront, brought to you by the Unshackled.net.
On Friday, Home Affairs Minister Tony Burke, or as we call him around here, Tony Burker, announced that he had listed White Australia and its former associated groups, the National Socialist Network and the European Australian Movement, as prohibited hate groups. So under the Combating Anti-Semitism, Hate and Extremism Criminal Migration Law Act 2026. Remember when Anthony Albanese recalled a parliament at the beginning of the year, post the Bondi massacre, to pass this emergency legislation, which of course Susan Ley demanded, and it was the fact that she got wedged on this contributed to her losing the leadership. So this makes it illegal, it's unlawful. So anyone who joins, directs, supports, funds, or recruits for a prohibited hate group faces up to 15 years in prison. Now, Thomas Sewell, in a video posted online, said a High Court challenge was underway and claimed that the ASIO Director General Mike Burgess made the hate group recommendation when White Australia made its political party registration application with the Australian Electoral Commission on Anzac Day. Now, banning a political party, there is a High Court precedent for that. Robert Menzies in 1951 tried to ban the Communist Party of Australia. The High Court ruled that was unconstitutional because the Constitution allows for a responsible and representative government, and representative means that the Australian people should be the ultimate deciders of who they want to vote for, and they never elected a Communist Party MP at the state or federal level. Robert Menzies tried to hold a referendum to ban the Communist Party. It was unsuccessful. The Labor opposition at the time, led by Herbert Ver Everett, opposed it because it didn't have bipartisan support. It failed. So that's the historical precedent. Now, I asked Grok about White Australia's High Court challenge. So $150,000 has been crowdfunded, and Grok said because they are a violent, extremist group, it's likely to be different because, well, the Communist Party of Australia were violent. It's alleged that they murdered the Soviets murdered one of its members who was acting as a spy for the Soviet Union. So obviously they were getting Soviet funding and assistance. There's actually remember the ABC, sometimes they have some good stuff. There's a good ABC historical documentary called Final Rendezvous about Soviet sleeper agents in Australia, and because ASIO sprung one of them, he was found hung in a tree in Adelaide Park. So yeah, there was murder associated with the Communist Party of Australia. Annie Borton says, I think White Australia Party was on the brink of widespread national support given the disgust most people have about multiculturalism. I would disagree with you, Anna Borschen there, because the algorithm can lead you to believe that a movement has more support than it actually does. So I wouldn't certainly, because there's a lot of supportive comments on X, for example, I take that to mean widespread support.
This is WilmsFront, brought to you by the Unshackled.net.
Now, another organisation that has doubled down on woke is the Australian Football League, where it is Sir Doug Nicholls round, which is its a round to celebrate Indigenous players and culture, which actually goes for 2 rounds. So even though it's called Sir Doug Nicholls round, it goes for 2 rounds. So it was Sir Doug Nicholls round last week, and it's going to have another round this week, including the dream time at the G match between Richmond and Essendon. And now for Sir Doug Nicholls round, I'll just share the AFL website here. Some of the teams change their names to Aboriginal names. So Fremantle, which is second on the table, is Walyalup, and Melbourne is Naarm. Even Fox Footy changed Gary Lyons' his special comments resume that he was in the Naarm team of the century. So it's made retrospective. Then you have the Adelaide Crows, who are called Kurwana. Then you have St Kilda, who are Euro York. And then you have Port Adelaide, who are Yata Politi. And West Coast Eagles, who are Waleche Marawa. And like I said, this is they have it retrospective for the entire 2 weeks. And so this also means Sir Doug Nicholls round. It also means that there's 9 matches per round, means there's 18 welcome to countries before every game. But they've escalated the welcome to countries even more, that they have, not only do they have a smoking ceremony, but they take it's basically in a mobile the fire, they lift it, it's in a container. So what do they have, some coals underneath, and then because the players are all standing opposite each other, one of the Aboriginal elders or whoever he is takes it around and invites, aka pressures, the players to inhale the smoke. So apparently you're supposed to smell it, sniff it as a sign of respect. And if your player refuses to, they could be shamed on social media. Why didn't you smell the smoking ceremony smoke? Why are you being disrespectful? Now, one of the concerns of the AFL is that there's not enough Aboriginal players being drafted. And so one of the ideas is that each AFL club will have a list position solely for an Aboriginal player. And last week, they announced a new Equality, Inclusion and Safety Advisory Committee with a focus on LGBTQI, First Nations and culturally diverse players. One that springs to mind is Sudanese AFL players. So I don't know why they need a particular focus, since there's no problem drafting them. They don't. None of them seem to have off-field issues like some of the Aboriginal players have had. So those on the committee will be Alex Pearce, the Fremantle captain, Gabby Seymour, Taryn Lee, Raina Hussein, and Tom Harley. Now, the only name that leaps out to me is Alex Pearce, who is another woke captain of the AFL. So obviously the most famous woke captain in the AFL is Darcy Moore, who is going out with ABC presenter Dee Salmon, who's just written a book on relationships. And he studies international relations at Melbourne Uni, which is, it's fair to say, is a woke degree. Well, Alex Pearce, he just completed a distance education, a Deacon's Arts and psychology degree with a major in politics. And like Darcy Moore, he also has long hair as well. He doesn't get much attention here in Melbourne because he's a Fremantle captain. He did cause some controversy last year when he shared a post from the pro-Palestine Irish band Kneecap, which was deemed to have offended a Jewish people. That was the interpretation by some commentators in the media. They have a young Muslim player in the Fremantle team this year, and Alex Pearce decided that he and the team would fast for Ramadan like him to make him feel welcome. But wait, there's more. So the Sydney Swans, they announced in consultation with the Rainbow Swans that it had dropped St Kilda from its annual Pride game because they appealed the 8-week suspension that its Indigenous VFL footballer Lance Collard got for his second homophobic slur. He denied it, but he was convicted by the tribunal based on hearsay evidence from 2 Frankston Dolphins players. He claims he said maggot, not the F-bomb. So originally got 8 weeks, but it was reduced to 2 weeks by the appeals board, and the AFL in response sacked the appeals board chair, Will Houghton, because he said in his reducing of the suspension from 8 to 2 weeks, it is commonplace that players can employ language from time to time which is racist, sexist, homophobic while off the field. So the AFL said they categorically rejected that assertion. So did the AFL Players Association, which Darcy Moore is the current president of. So it'd be great if we could sack the judges and magistrates here in Victoria who gave woefully inadequate sentences just as a diversion. So Sydney is, instead in its Pride game, going to play the Western Bulldogs. Does that mean the Rainbow Swans prefer it doggy style? Sorry, that was a really lame joke. Auditing Australia says, why don't the AFL have a Irish round or an Italian round? Many great footballers came from those two countries that have played AFL. Well, we have a Vietnamese Australian AFL footballer now for Essendon, Jaden Nguyen. I think he joked that he's in the Vietnamese AFL team of the century. It's funny because like Nguyen is like the Smith of like Vietnamese surnames. But his parents gave him a bogan Australian name, Jaden. And I haven't got the image for it, that the AFL showed that at the Gold Coast, Port Adelaide, the Gold Coast versus Yada Porty game, that the Sudanese player for the Gold Coast Suns, Mac Andrew, and the Port Adelaide player, Alir, also South Sudanese. See, Gout's not the only South Sudanese Australian who has the same first name and last name. They swapped jerseys, and the AFL posted this as two men of the same heritage sharing a wonderful moment there. So just saying that's the celebration of what you're referring to, auditing Australia. Well, it can apply to many different the AFL. It's cultural diversity. I mean, it's a committee. It's new committee. I mean, it has to do something. And don't forget, there is Laura Kane, who is what's her position? She's the currently executive general manager of inclusion at the AFL. And another bizarre thing that was posted on afl.com.au was that the AFL sharpens focus on search for first Indigenous senior coach. And as a AFL VFL historian, Rhett Bartlett posted in reply to this, Graham Polly-Farmer was the first senior VFL AFL coach, because the AFL is a continuation of the VFL, coached Geelong from 73 to 75. Sam Newman, who regularly gets called a racist because he hates the welcome to country. He always mentions that Graham Polly-Farmer was one of his mentors when he was at Geelong. And also another Indigenous coach was Barry Cable at North Melbourne, though he's been cancelled because of historical child sexual abuse. But that just shows that the point is that the AFL doesn't even know its own history and thinks that it's well, it just wants to feel that it's going to break another glass ceiling.
This is WilmsFront, brought to you by the Unshackled.net.
Now, Sir Keir Starmer's final stand as British Prime Minister appears to be doing everything that he possibly can to suppress the attendance at Tommy Robinson's Unite the Kingdom rally. And Tommy Robinson, he is a civic nationalist. You could describe him as a postmodern liberal. Tommy Robinson back 15 years ago, he was my red pill because he made the point that, hey, if you want this postmodern liberal society, Islam can't be allowed to pervade it. And Keir Starmer, he blocked the visas of Rebel News reporters Avi Yemeni and Ezra Levant, which you can have your own opinion of them, but blocking the visas of news reporters, that is not respecting freedom of the press. And remember, he told Donald Trump and J.D. Vance that he had respect for freedom of speech. Well, there wasn't much respect for free speech, free assembly, freedom of the press in Keir Starmer's video condemning the Unite the Kingdom rally.
Tomorrow's march in London is a reminder of what we're up against in the battle of our values. The organisers, including convicted thugs and racists, are peddling hatred and division, plain and simple. Their goal is to convince people that Britain's problems are caused by those living alongside them. But that is not the Britain that I know. This is a country built on decency, fairness and respect. A country that is at its best when people from different backgrounds come together in common purpose. This is our country, with a majority who share those values, a majority who may not always be as loud, but must always define who we are. So, my government will not stand in the way of peaceful protest, but we will act decisively against hatred. We will use the full force of the law when that hatred manifests as violence. And we will ban those coming into the UK who seek to stir it up, as we have done already. Because this country belongs to all of us, and I will not tolerate anyone who seeks to stand in the way of that.
Maybe that's where Anthony Albanese is getting his lines about multiculturalism and migrant communities from. Now, Albanese is not at the catastrophic polling levels that Keir Starmer is, though the way that Albanese's federal budget is received is approval ratings and Labor's primary vote could dip dramatically south. Now, despite Sir Keir Starmer saying that he wants to fight on, get on with the job as Prime Minister, there's reports saying that he's wanting to prepare a quiet exit. So Wes Streeting, now former Health Secretary, he resigned, obviously preparing a leadership challenge. He'd be the first openly gay British Prime Minister. As I mentioned last week, there's a lot of speculation that Keir Starmer is actually the first gay British Prime Minister. Maybe post his Prime Ministership, he can do some more standing behind Ukrainians. Obviously, the trial of the 3 Ukrainian mayor models who are accused of arsoning his home and car is ongoing. So Wes Streeting, his pitch was for Britain to rejoin the EU, which basically I think he wants to have the next general election as another de facto referendum on Brexit, because obviously Nigel Farage and Reform are leading in the polls. I think the strategy is because, well, Donald Trump is incredibly unpopular in Britain as he is here, and Nigel Farage has been open about his friendship with Donald Trump. The Starmer government is looking to European allies for its future defence guarantees, NATO's, and so that is why they think that it'll be in their electoral. Well, where Streeting thinks it'll be ultimately in in Britain's interest and in his political interest to say that Britain's future is with Europe, not with the United States under a Prime Minister Nigel Farage. There is the wild card. So Wes Streeting is from the nominal right, but from the socialist left is the Mayor of Manchester, Andy Burnham. So the seat of Makerfield has been vacated so he can become an MP and launch a challenge for the Prime Ministership. There's just one thing now, is that the city of Manchester is now sky blue. And I'm not talking about Manchester City in the Premier League. Their Premier League title hopes are hanging by a thread, but it's sky blue as in Reform sky blue. And so Reform could win that seat. And so if Andy Burnham can't even get into Parliament, then he's got no hope of being Prime Minister. Then there is also Angela Rayner, the former Deputy Prime Minister, who had to resign because she owed tax on her home, although she's been cleared of that, apparently impropriety, and she just gets to pay a bit extra because, there's one rule for the politicians, the elites in Britain, and there's one rule for the ordinary person who'd probably be thrown in jail for a tax, a dodge, non-payment like that. And Angela Rayner it's worth mentioning, a ginger. And I don't know if she's getting advice from another ginger former Deputy Prime Minister turned Prime Minister, Julia Gillard, who, of course, famously knifed her Prime Minister to become Australia's first female Prime Minister. So I wonder if she's being a mentor to Angela Rayner. This is what you do to stab your Prime Minister in the back to get the job for yourself. She's from the left of the party, Angela Rayner. She would just as be she would be a disaster for Britain, like Julia Gillard was for Australia. And again, it doesn't matter who's the leader of the Labor Party. It is the product. Britain, it's basically in the failed state it was in the 1970s, the sick man of Europe, it was called. And obviously, the Nigel Farage would like to think of himself as a Margaret Thatcher type saviour. The general election, though, is not due until 2029. 5-year terms are way too long. So it's going to be a slow process if Keir Starmer resigns and there's a leadership contest. The Brits have inherited the Australian disease of changing prime ministers every few years. So they went from after David Cameron resigned, after Brexit, then there was Theresa May for 3 years, Boris Johnson for 3 years, Liz Truss for 49 days, Rishi Sunak for around about 2 years, and then Keir Starmer for about 2 years, and then someone else. So the merry-go-round looks like it's going to continue while Britain continues to spiral, living standards continue to decline, and the ordinary working people continue to get screwed over, and the invasion of the country by the illegal boat migrants continues unabated.
This is WilmsFront, brought to you by the Unshackled.net.
Now, before I conclude, you will remember last week, I did a segment on hantavirus, and I predicted that we wouldn't be talking about hantavirus probably next month. I stand corrected. We are now not talking about it this week. Hantavirus is so last week because, well, there is only from the M. Hontus cruise ship linked to the Anders strain of hantavirus, which the two patient zeros, this Dutch couple who died and went to watch birds at a garbage dump in Argentina. So there are only 11 cases linked to this cruise ship and still only 3 deaths. Meanwhile, the World Health Organization has declared a international public health emergency, or is it? It's a international emergency public health concern because of a Ebola outbreak in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Now, this is not the dominant Zaire variant of Ebola. It is the Bundibugyo variant, which is named after the Bundibugyo district in western Uganda, where it was first identified in 2008. Now, there was a outbreak of the Sudanese Ebola variant last year in Uganda. This outbreak it's spread beyond the Democratic Republic of the Congo into Uganda. So currently there are 80 deaths and 246 cases. So the outbreak, according to health authorities, has been going on for weeks and months. Now, there is no vaccines or therapeutics for this Bundibugyo variant like there is for the Zaire variant. Now, as I mentioned to you last week, Ebola is named after the Ebola River in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. And now, should we be more scared of Ebola than we should be of hantavirus? Short answer, yes. But there is not, it seems, as much interest from the Western media and on the social media panic merchants, maybe because it's affecting Africans in Africa, which sounds a bit racist to me. Of course, public health panickers. They would never want to be accused of being racist or having racial biases, though there has been one American missionary who has been affected with Ebola and has been airlifted to Germany. Now, Ebola is a hemorrhagic fever, which it's transmitted by bodily fluids. It occurs from zoonotic spillover, and there have been lots of outbreaks of Ebola in Africa. I tell you what, a reason why the people in the West should be concerned is because, as we learnt from Liam Bartlett's Spotlight episode on renewable energy, the cobalt used in the renewable energy battery storage is mined in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, and there's going to be no more renewable energy battery storage if all the miners are dead with Ebola. And so it's interesting that the Trump administration is being blamed for this outbreak because of their USAID cuts to health programs in Africa and cuts to the CDC. Donald Trump has announced a travel ban from the Democratic Republic of the Congo, Uganda, and South Sudan. Though the Democratic Republic of the Congo, they made the FIFA World Cup, so now they're going to get to the United States if they're not allowed there. Now, what makes these outbreaks difficult to contain is that there's a lot of civil wars in various parts of the Congo, so it's hard for health authorities to get to places under militia rule. So, it's also worth pointing out before I finish here that the US missionary being airlifted to Germany. Germany is also famous for a hemorrhagic fever outbreak, the Marburg virus. It's called the Marburg virus not because not because it originated in Germany. It's because it's originally from Africa. It leaked from a lab in Marburg, and a whole bunch of people died. So, yeah, it was a lab leak in the 70s. Remember, that was just a conspiracy theory. But yes, it's Ebola a week this week. I mean, there's lots more cases and deaths than Hunter virus. So, as I said, that was going to be forgotten about in a week. Dawn Browning says that Sux Hammer warned Ebola would make a comeback due to burial customs. Sounds terrible. Anyway, here's some AlphaGo while you wait. Yes, it also spreads because the traditional African burials, they touch the dead body, which has died from Ebola. You can still catch it from a dead body. And also they believe that witch doctors can cure Ebola. So believing in a superstition like that as well is another reason why it spreads.
This is WilmsFront, brought to you by the Unshackled.net.
And that's the WilmsFront Snapshot news program for this week. Thank you so much for your company once again. Now, remember, I cannot. Your support is much appreciated. Your viewership, and what's appreciated even more is if you're able to financially support us. So you can support us over on Substack at the Unshackled.net. The unshackled.substack.com/subscribe. You can also take out a premium membership over at the unshackled.net/membership. Also, as you know, I'm a fortnightly contributor to Reality Check Radio, which is expanding into Australia, has Australian hosts now. It has Lisa Jane Spencer, whose interview with Malcolm Roberts was the subject of a Canberra press conference last week, because Malcolm Roberts said that, although he didn't believe that Bondi was a false flag, he had no evidence, he said he didn't rule it out. Chris Kenny did a segment very angry about it, and it was asked at a press conference in Canberra. And so Malcolm Roberts said she's a victim of the media. And that's why she's so naive. So Lisa Jane Spencer did a video response. I should get her as a guest on WilmsFront as well. Also, Graham Hood, former Qantas pilot, who resigned rather than take the jab. He's also a RCR host in Australia. They also have a newsletter. They're in Australia now. There are Bytes newsletter, which is delivered to your inbox every weekday. So they have a very successful weekday newsletter in New Zealand. They have now expanded it into Australia, so it's very exciting. Reality Check Radio's expansion into Australia, because there is nothing like RCR here in Australia. Sky News Australia and The Spectator, Quadrant, they all have the same establishment conservative position. And so, like Rebel News in Australia, obviously it's very clear to know where they stand on all of the major issues as well. But RCR is not afraid to tackle any issue, and actually does allow free thought and discussion. So it's very exciting that they're going to be expanding here. So please sign up to the newsletter here. Now, I will be back next Tuesday for another WilmsFront Snapshot news program. Watch this space if I lock in a WilmsFront featured guest. And I also intend to record some new reports from Tiger Mount with Richard Wollstonecroft as I end my shows now. Please resist the urge to doom scroll, doom post. Look out for each other. Try to stay positive, and just do what you can in your everyday life. Good night, everybody.
Thanks for tuning in to WilmsFront. Visit timwilms.com to view the archive of episodes, and keep visiting the Unshackled.net to view all our shows, and to keep up with the latest real news and analysis.